going on, guys? Welcome back to the 4-1 Wheat. This week in the Weekly Wheaties, episode 23, we're going to talk about New York City, specifically titled A Cajun's Guide to New York City, because I'm arguably a Cajun from South Louisiana, and I visit New York a lot, and I think I have a lot of insight to share to people who may have never been there. While, again, it's entitled Cajun's Guide, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be from South Louisiana. It just means that this podcast is going to be created to accompany a blog post I wrote with the same title, which gets very specific on things about traveling from Louisiana. First off, I couldn't afford the rights to the Frank Sinatra or Taylor Swift song, so apologies, you have to still listen to my same intro. Hope that's okay. But first thing with travel is flights. So I talked about flights a little bit on the last podcast about taking nonstops. Traditionally, if you're going to take a nonstop from New Orleans to New York, it's going to be to LaGuardia, JFK. Every once in a while, you can get one to Newark. JFK and LaGuardia are going to be your two main airports into New York. LaGuardia is the most closest to the city. However, JFK offers public transportation through the subway or the MTA, the metro system, from the airport all the way into the city. I've taken that a few times myself when I've traveled in groups and alone. It can be done. It can be done very inexpensively, and it can be done within about an hour, hour and a half. Let's kind of give you some insight on the timing. Now, if you go to New York for longer than 2 days, you need to learn how to use the metro. You need to learn how to use the subway system, because traveling through the subway is going to be quicker than any other form of transportation. The buses are generally pretty quick, but a taxi is not going to be your quickest way. Uber is not going to be your quickest way every time, depending on where you're going and how quick you need to get there. You can get across the whole island very, very quickly through nothing but the subway sometimes. When I go, I typically buy the week-long pass for $35, I think, that gets you unlimited travel for subway and bus. The cost might have went up since I've been. It has been a good while. I haven't been since COVID hit, but I want to say it was $35. So the flights are going to be the first thing you want to book, because as soon as you book your flights, you know when you're going to be there. And then you can start booking everything else. Don't book a hotel yet. My advice for New York specifically is to save a hotel for last. And I'll tell you why when we talk about it. Little spoiler there. I don't want to tell you too much. But ultimately, you need to know what you're doing, where you're going to be, and when you're going to be there. So New York itself is a really big island to itself, and there's hotels all over the place. So you don't want to book in a specific spot just yet. New York is also a walking city. I talked about using the subway a lot, but you're going to walk a lot. We joke in the Baton Rouge area that LSU is a walking campus because you have to park and walk anywhere you want to go. New York is very much a walking city. To that point, if you've never been to New York, the number one biggest advice I could give you compared to any other city you've ever been to, with a few exceptions, do not rent a car. Let me repeat that. Do not rent a car. You don't want to rent a car in New York City. There's nowhere to park, and the places that you do park are not anywhere close to where you need to be, and you're going to pay like $50 a day to park there, if not more. You do not need a car in New York City. You do not want a car in New York City. The people that live there know that what they need a car for. I want to say a number or some research statistics I've heard before. It's like 95% of the people who live in New York City do not own a car. Like, that's the type of statistics we're looking at with New York. You don't want a car when you're there. So we're going to plan to walk. We're going to walk a lot. We're going to get a subway. We're going to use the subway. We're going to use the bus. Save your taxi and Uber rides to and from the airport potentially. for things that you might be running late for things that if you're like dressed really nice and you don't want to carry a lot of things with you, you would want to use a taxi or an Uber for that. And then lastly, save it for like if it's raining and you don't want to fight public transportation in the rain, or if you're there during the snow, right? Save your taxi and Uber times for that. I would even encourage you to set like a budget for how much money you're going to want to spend on a taxi or an Uber. Because if you're not careful, you could rake up a couple $100 really, really quick on just transportation. And part of this podcast is to help you be somewhat frugal with your trips so you're not spending an ungodly amount or outside expenses that you might not have thought that you would have to incur. All right, so we know how we're getting there. We know where we're using to get around. What are we going to do? Well, I suggest plan your biggest expenses or your biggest must-dos first. I'll use some examples because those are the best ways to kind of plan these. And you have to do your research. One of my best friends, I helped plan a trip to New York. He said, Garrett, the number one thing I want to do is go see a Statue of Liberty. I'm like, okay, well, how are you planning on doing that otherwise? And they basically said we were just going to show up maybe 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, go to where you get on the boat, buy a ticket and go. And I was like, no, you're not. Because if you did it that way, you could, but you're going to wait 3 hours in line to buy a ticket for an event that takes you 3 hours to do. And by the time you get up to the front of the line, they might have even sold out and might not even have any tickets left. So, for example, with the Statue of Liberty, first off, you got to ask yourself, do you really want to go to the Statue of Liberty? Do you want to touch the Statue of Liberty, climb up the steps? If you're okay just driving past it in a boat, you can do that for free in like an hour. If you want to go touch it, it's going to be a minimum of 3 hours, and it's going to cost a minimum of like $30. And I'm going to tell you, you need to pay more to guarantee your ticket at a certain entry time. So when you show up, you go and there's no questions. Again, you're paying a little bit more, as I mentioned in the last podcast, but you're getting it's going to be worth it. You're going to thank me later. So Statue of Liberty is one of the big things that if you do not plan it, it's going to eat up an entire day. If you plan it, it's going to eat up a quarter, maybe half of your day. So we want to plan the big things first. The things that are going to take a lot of time, cost a lot of money, or things that we do not want to go home and say, I didn't do X, Y, or Z. Statue of Liberty is usually one of those that are big, but that's also one of the things I would tell you, you might not even really want to do that. A lot of people that have done that love it. They'll do it again. They're glad they did it. Other people, myself included, it was just like, I'm glad I did it, but it's kind of a waste of time. I would have rather have spent elsewhere. I've been enough and I've done enough that I don't have to really play that game. But if you're going and you don't know the next time you'll go, you kind of need to start prioritizing what you're going to do and what you're okay missing. Ellis Island, in my opinion, was way more interesting and worthwhile doing than the Statue of Liberty itself. Again, I'm different. I'm biased. My opinions are different than yours. I see that. So I want you to be aware of what to expect. And I want to set your expectations accordingly, too. The next big thing is the 9/11 Memorial. There is a tour associated with that. If you want to do it, you're going to spend $60, $70, $80, I believe. You're going to want to spend extra to make sure you get a time so you're not stuck there for hours on end waiting to see if you can even go up. You can do a lot of the 9/11 Memorial for free. You won't get to do like a tour guide, obviously, but you can definitely see Ground Zero for free. You don't have to pay for that. I've never done the tour. I've never done the newer tours that are in One World Observatory. I've heard great things from it. I've done enough of the tours in the past that if I'm being honest, I don't know if I'll see anything that I haven't seen already. It's a very sombering experience, and there's so much there and so many other great tours and museums I haven't seen that I would like to do next. So take that for what it's worth. In the museum world, There are hundreds of museums, and I'm not even exaggerating. Some of my favorites, this is kind of off the cuff, I haven't written any of this down. The Natural History Museum is awesome. I will go there every time I go and can't get enough of it. The Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art is one of my favorites. MoMA is one of my favorites. Guggenheim is worth doing, but maybe not worth, to me, worth doing multiple times. There's a museum right next or right close by the Guggenheim called the Frick Collection. Absolutely one of my favorite museums I've done. The Tenement Museum is a favorite. There's a transit museum that was really cool. I would have to look up some of the other ones. A lot of them are wrote down on my blog post. I was just kind of doing this from memory. But again, my top three favorites for sure are Frick, the Met, and the Animal Museum. There's so much you can do in New York for free. You could just walk Central Park and it would take you all day and you still wouldn't see everything that's in Central Park alone. And that entire park can be done for free. So that's one thing that I really enjoy doing is just walking around Central Park. The zoo is in Central Park as well. There's also the Bronx Zoo, which is larger and has a lot more to offer than the Central Park Zoo. So consider that. In the blog post, I also talk about tours. There are tons of tours you can do. Every museum you go to, you can pay extra for a certain tour. You can pay extra for a very specific tour to see a very specific thing, where the tour guide will literally spend 2 hours just talking about one little part of the museum. I very much enjoy the very specific and nuanced tours you can do. Some of my favorites are the food tours. My favorite of the food tour is the pizza tour, obviously. You heard about the pizza already in New York. So go find out why it's the best. Don't just take my word for it. Go take a pizza tour and go eat some pizza. There's tons of shopping. There's an entire shopping district. Chinatown is known for its shopping. The Macy's parade, or not Macy's parade, but Macy's and the surrounding area is known for shopping. Houston Street for its shopping. Fifth Avenue for its shopping. Times Square for the little gadgets and tons of stuff just in Times Square. So you can do a lot just with shopping in New York. You can literally take a trip to New York that you say this is going to be a shopping trip, and you go shopping at different places every hour for a week and not see the same type of stuff. So shopping is huge. Museums are huge. Food, we talked about that. Any type of cuisine or culture you can imagine is available in New York City. In my blog post, I've also mentioned a couple of my favorite types. I enjoy trying to eat really good Indian and Chinese, even though we might have Chinese or Indian where I'm from. They have amazing Chinese food where you can get the carts that come to your table. Forgive me if I'm butchering this and if it's not even genuine Chinese, but it's kind of like a la carte. There's amazing dumpling restaurants. There's amazing falafel and Greek and Lebanese and European and Middle Eastern. You name it, they have it. And if it's on the corner of the street, it's amazing. I talked about awesome pizza places, but literally any pizza by the slice that you can think of, try it. It's like $1, $2, $3 max. You're maybe out $3 for a slice of pizza that you only took a couple bites, but you might find some pizza that you absolutely adore and you'll go back to and you'll put it on your list and tell me I need to add it to mine. Like, that's how much amazing food there is just in New York. I kind of mentioned taxis and Ubers. We talked about the subway, which leads me to hotels. And if you stick around till the end, I'm going to tell you two of my favorite things to do in New York City that are not included in my blog post. So when we talk about hotels, where you stay in New York is defined by one of two things. Either where you want to stay based on views, or what you're going to be doing most of the time you're there based on proximity. And proximity could be proximity to a subway station or a subway stop, right? If you want a hotel with a Central Park view, get ready to pay for it. You're going to pay a lot of money. If you're okay paying for that, by all means, do not let me talk you out of it. If you want a hotel view of Times Square, be ready to pay for it. You have to be very careful when a hotel says city view or window view. A lot of times, just because you have a window, you literally might only see the windows of the adjoining building next to your hotel, and that's it. If you have a quote city view, you might see a little bit of a street or a little bit of the quote city. But you're going to have to pay a lot more money for that high hotel floor with a city view or with the Times Square view or with the Central Park view. Be ready for it. Which leads me to the next thing. If you know what hotel chain you want, like if you're a member of, let's say, Marriott or Hilton, just book directly with that hotel. Get the cheapest or the least inexpensive room you can. Suck it up that it's going to be a small room, but know you're only going to sleep there and take a shower and change. You don't need a large hotel room in New York. No, people that live there don't have large apartments, right? So be cognizant that you're not going to eat in your hotel. You're not going to do anything other than sleep. So like get the smallest one you can, save your money to do something else. Unless you know you want to pay for that view or that prime location. Because a hotel in Central Park, or not, I'm sorry, on Central Park Avenue or on Fifth Avenue or in Times Square is going to cost more than a hotel in Gramercy or something like that, right? So understand where you're going to be, what you want to do most. If you know you're going to want to go to Central Park more than once, maybe you splurge for a hotel close to Central Park to save your time. If you know you're going to eat in Central Park and see 3 Broadway shows and you want to go see this, and this, like close to Times Square, like get a hotel close to Times Square, but understand you're going to have to pay more for it. Also with hotels, don't be afraid to kind of take a chance with something like Priceline, where you can get a 4-star hotel for a little next to nothing, but you don't know what hotel you're going to be staying at. I've had friends have really good luck with that because you can pick which area you want and you can get a really good deal. Your mileage may vary, so don't take my word for it. Just understand you're taking a gamble. Now, my top 2 places or things to do in New York City are actually 2 of the very same things, and it's places to go to get great views, people watch, and get a snack or a drink. That's it. That's something I love to do though in New York. And these 2 places I don't include in my blog, but I do tell people about them when they're telling me about going to New York. The first is the Metropolitan Museum of Art. On the 3rd or 4th, it might even be the 5th floor, there's something called the Cantor Garden Bar or something like that. This has amazing views of the south part of Central Park and the skyline. You can go during the day or late at night. You can get a drink or a snack, just hang out on the terrace, enjoy the views. It's awesome. My second favorite place to go is in Times Square in a Marriott hotel called the R Lounge. It's actually in the Renaissance Hotel, but you don't have to be staying there to go visit. And you have to be 21 to go here. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, you do have to buy a ticket to get in. But the R Lounge gives you awesome views of Times Square. You can get a drink, you can get a snack, and you can people watch. The last little tip I want to give you is be aware that some of the museums are pay what you want and not what the ticket price is. Some museums are also free on certain days. Just be aware they might have more people there. So that was just a little taste of New York City from a Cajun. Some things I've learned over the years and my trips that I've taken down. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any specific questions about New York, please let me know. I might even do a part 2 of this because there are some things I didn't get a chance to talk about. But till then, see ya.